है प्रार्थना गुरुदेव से ये स्वर्ग संसार हो, अति उच्चतम जीवन बने परमार्थमय व्यवहार हो। ना हम रहे अपने लिए, हमको सभी से गर्ज है। गुरुदेव ये आशीष दे, जो सोचने का फर्ज है। हम हो पुजारी तत्व के, गुरुदेव के आदेश के, सच प्रेम के निकनेम के, सधर्म के सत्कर्म के, ऊंची झूठी राह की, अन्याय की अभिमान की, सेवा करन को दास की, परवाह नहीं हो जान की। छोटे न हो हम गोदी से, हो विश्वमय से ईश्वरमय, हो राममय और कृष्णमय, जगदेव में जगदीशमय। हर इंद्रियों पर ताव कर, हम वीर हो अति वीर हो, उज्ज्वल रहे सर से सदा, निज धर्म रत खंबीर हो। अति शुद्ध हो आचार से, तन मन हमारा सर्वदा, आध्यात्म की शक्ति हमें पल भी नहीं कर दे जुदा। इस अमर आत्मा का हमें हर श्वास भर ले गम रहे। गर मौत भी आ गई, सुख दुख हमसे सम रहे।
तो जहाँ पे भी सपोर्ट करना होगा तो ये जो फाइनल के बच्चे हैं वही सपोर्ट करेंगे पूरी क्लास को। क्यों? ठीक है, तो कहीं पे भी गलत बोल रहा है या 10 मिनट के लिए कम से कम एक्सप्लेन करना, तो यू ऑल विल बी सपोर्टिंग दैट।
Good morning to everyone. I'm Yashwardhan Sharma. Ashish and Satvik. Ashish and Satvik this Saturday will be taking class on India's 33, that is earning per share, India's 34, that is interim financial reporting, 108, that is operating segments, and 24, that is related party disclosure. All of them are mostly disclosure-based standards, except for EPS, which is a general purpose standard. So, except for 34, that is interim, that is general purpose standard. So let's start. First, I'll start with EPS, earning per share. As the name implies, it gives an idea of idea of earning per share. So it's comparable of a reporting entity from with itself of its previous years or previous reporting periods, and of the same entity with other entities of the same period. So earning per share, it gives an understanding of profitability measurement and investor decision making under Ind AS. So what is EPS? First of all, it measures the profit attributable to one equity share. If I had to sum this entire Ind AS in one line, that is to measure the profit attributable to one equity share. But it's not as simple as just profit divided by shares. There are technical difficulties when we actually compute the EPS, which we'll address in this presentation. Now, why do we not use absolute profit? Because absolute profit can be misleading. An investor only wants to know how much they will make per share, not absolute earnings, because it may differ. It may differ based on different aspects. Now, the objective of the EPS disclosure is that it allows for cross-entity comparison, which I already told you. Two entities with varying EPS can be compared against each other because the common denominator is same. Secondly, it enables performance tracking for the same entity across different reporting periods. You can also measure EPS of 2024, 25, and 2023, 24 of the same entity and take a grasp of whether the entity has encountered growth or not. But there is one limitation that the comparability of EPS may be effective by differing accounting policies between entities. So it's basically earning divided by number of shares. Now, an entity may have different benchmarks or hallmarks for what constitutes its earnings. So that is the only limitation of this NDS. Now, major two types of earnings per share that are described in this NDS is basic earning per share and diluted earning per share. Basic is, as it implies, very basic, that profit after tax divided by the weighted average number of shares. However, diluted is, it assumes that the conversion of all dilutive potential equity shares. For example, if all the instruments of the entity which are floating in the market were to be converted into equity shares, what would be the earning per share in that case? Diluted earning per share gives an insight into that. However, it's not always the case. Dilutive earning per share is only for disclosure purposes. It only gives the worst case scenario. If all the instruments were to be diluted into equity shares, how much would the earning per share fall? Now, the logic is that users need both normal EPS and worst case EPS to make informed investment decisions. And as per NDS, every company is required to disclose basic and diluted EPS on the face of their statement of P&L. Those of you who have audited any, prepared any balance sheet would know, like on the statement of P&L. So first we'll go to basic EPS. I'll give you the formula and the logic. First, the formula is profit available to shareholders, and which is divided by weighted average number of ordinary shares. Now, profit available to equity shareholders is pretty straightforward. It's the profit with what we call earning after tax in layman terms. There are certain adjustments. We'll address it in the next slide. Now, the denominator is weighted average number of ordinary shares. So what is weighted average number and why that? Weighted average number of ordinary shares includes the number of equity shares outstanding on the beginning of the reporting period, adjusted for any buyback, the number of shares bought back during the period, or new shares issued during the period, multiplied by time being factor. Now, why do we multiply it by time being factor? Because the shares that are issued during the period do not have the same value as the shares which were outstanding from the beginning of the period. The shareholders, if a company issues shares on 1st July 2025, then the shareholders of those shares do not have the right on the earning from April to June 30th. That's why we multiply it by weighted average. So the formula is pretty simple. We take the opening balance and we give time being factor for the shares issued and brought back to compute weighted average equity shares. Now there are certain special cases where profit available to equity shareholder is not what it is usually considered, that is earning after tax. The cases are when preference shares are redeemed, or preference shares that are mandatorily convertible into equity shares are converted early at a premium. So that premium is kind of a charge on the retained earnings, and it will be reduced from the earnings per share. It will be reduced from the earnings after tax of that period. Usually only the preference share dividend is reduced, but in this special case, when we are giving an extra amount or excess premium to the preference shareholders, that amount is also deducted from earning after tax. The logic is that the premium on redemption or the conversion of shares represents cost of capital that is economically borne by the equity holders only. It's not the cost of preference shareholder. They're getting the benefit, but who is bearing the cost? The equity shareholders. So it must be deducted from the profit attributable to equity shares when computing EPS. Now, I explain the concept of weighted average number of equity shares that we multiplied by time being factor. So what is that time being factor? That number of shares that the number of days that the share has been outstanding divided by 365 or 366. But how do we take the beginning date from which we have to consider the share to be outstanding? In different cases, basically it's the date from which the consideration for those shares becomes receivable. And following are certain cases that are listed, that if the shares were issued for cash, then the date from which the cash becomes receivable is considered as the date of issuance. In case of when dividend is reinvested, it is the date when dividend is reinvested. If a debt instrument is converted into equity shares, then the date when the interest on those equity debt instruments ceases to accrue is considered to be the date of issuance. Settlement of liability, then simply the date of settlement. If we are acquiring an asset, then date when the acquiring company, the company which is acquiring the asset recognizes the asset in its books is considered the date of issuance for those shares. In case of a business combination, then the date of combination as per the relevant Ind AS, then the underlying principle is that they are only counted when the entity becomes entitled to the consideration that is receivable in exchange for those shares. These are some specific points.
So कोई बताएगा what is the relevance of issuance of shares here? ये क्यों डिस्कस कर रहे हैं हम issuance of shares, date of issuance of share, how it is relevant?
बढ़िया ने बताया कि जो टाइम ईपीएस निकालते हैं तो उसके लिए ना वेटेड इक्विटी शेयर्स देते हैं, तो वेटेड इक्विटी शेयर में हम टाइम फैक्टर कंसीडर करते हैं। तो अभी यहाँ पे डेट ऑफ इशुएंस शेयर इस वजह से रेलिवेंट हो जाती है कि जो शेयर इशू होते हैं वो डिफरेंट केसेस में इशू हो सकते हैं, जैसे इशू फॉर कैश है, डिविडेंड इन्वेस्टमेंट है या कन्वर्टेबल है। तो उसमें फिर हमने को उसमें इंडेक्स में बताइए कि आपको किस डेट से कंसिडर करना है कि आपके पास वो शेयर होल्ड हो रहा है, फिर वहां से अपन पूरे साल में देखेंगे कितने टाइम के पास कितने टाइम तक पूरे साल में आपके पास शेयर रहे और फिर टाइम फैक्टर देके अपन उसका डिविडेंड कंसीडर करेंगे।
हाँ भाई सही है।
Correct.
चलो
So there are certain cases, bonus issue and right issue. These are two right issue that consist of a bonus part as well. So these are certain, what should I say, only the important topics in this EPS, where when you issue a bonus, it is basically a capitalization of your reserves. Your reserves is being transferred to your share capital. So it increases your share capital or the number of shares without actually having any impact on the earnings of that period. So whenever in EPS there is a bonus issue, there the comparable EPS is restated from the periods which are, so for example, if 2024 and 25 financials are given and 2023 and 24 financials are also given, right? So current year and previous year, current year there is a bonus issue. But for the purpose of disclosure, we will consider that the bonus shares had been issued at the beginning of 2023 and 2024. Why? Because otherwise, during the current year, the shares have been issued and they have increased the number of shares without having any impact on the earnings. So if we only take the impact of bonus from the current year, it wouldn't give a true and fair view. So that's why the nature of bonus shares is that the bonus share represent a capitalization of reserve without any actual cash inflow.
Small insight I just want. We are restating because अगर अपन देखें जो बोनस शेयर्स इस पे इशू होते हैं एग्जिस्टिंग नंबर ऑफ शेयर होल्डर्स को इशू होते हैं। तो एग्जिस्टिंग नंबर ऑफ शेयर होल्डर्स अपने पास पहले से ही होते हैं, तो इसीलिए अपने को ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू देने के लिए अपने को प्रीवियस ईयर और करंट ईयर दोनों को फिगर्स को रीस्टेट करते हैं, क्योंकि अपना जो बोनस का एडजस्टमेंट होता है वो एग्जिस्टिंग नंबर ऑफ शेयर होल्डर्स से होता है।
सही
कंपैरिजन होता है सर, क्योंकि अर्निंग तो उतनी रहेगी लेकिन नंबर ऑफ शेयर बढ़ जाएंगे तो अपना ईपीएस डाउन हो जाएगा,
तो अपन
वो कम हो गया।
तो अपने को ऐसा लगेगा कि करंट ईयर का अपना
in one line. So to summarize, there is no time being applied for bonus shares, and even if bonus shares were issued during the middle of the reporting period, it is considered that they were issued at the start of the beginning of the reporting period. And for example, let's take this illustrative example. Company X had 10,000 shares outstanding throughout 2021 and earned rupees 50,000. On 1st July, it issued 5,000 bonus shares and earning for 2022 were 60,000. So without the adjustment of bonus shares, the EPS would be simply 50,000, that is the earning, divided by the outstanding shares at that time, which is 5. And 2022 will be 60,000 divided by 12,500. But this is not actually comparable. So we adjust. We restate the 2021 EPS with the bonus, that is 50,000 divided by 15,000, and 2022 EPS as well, 60,000 divided by 15,000. 60,000 earnings remained as it is, and 15,000 were the number of shares that increased during that year. So this adjustment truly reveals the earning growth rather than showing the decline that is not material, that is not in substance, only in form. So another illustration this is a similar illustration. that ABC Limited had 10 lakh equity shares outstanding throughout the year. Net profit for the year was 20 lakh, and 1st January, 1:1 bonus share issue was made. So if anyone would like to answer this question, like this is an illustration, this is not an answer, but if anyone would like to, or I will just explain.
क्या वो
Explain.
कर देगा तो कर explain.
ABC Limited had 10 lakh equity shares outstanding throughout the year. Net profit for the year is 20
इतनी देर
lakh.
क्या कर रहा था, वो तो सारा सवाल पूछ लिया उसने. हैं?
ध्यान नहीं चला.
क्यों नहीं था? ध्यान तो रखना पड़ेगा ना. हाँ तो ही बता दे भाई.
Basically, we'll just calculate adjusted share. We'll increase the number of shares with the bonus amount, and the earning will remain as it is, resulting 20 lakh rupees of earning divided by 20 lakh share outstanding, 1 per share. The second is right issue, which includes a bonus element. So first of all, a right issue is also a right given to the existing shareholder to buy the shares at a discounted price. Now, the NDS assumes that the company will not, for no reason, give the existing shareholders the shares at a discounted price. So it considers the balance. So if 10 rupee shares are given at rupees 6, then the 4 rupees 4 is considered as a bonus by the NDS 33. So if we understand, a right issue basically involves existing shareholders the right to purchase additional shares, usually at a price below the current market value. When the issue price is below fair market value, the NDS implies that it contains an implicit bonus element. And this concessional pricing means shareholders receive part of their allocation. The index does not assume that you're giving the shares on discount, but that certain shares are being given for free, basically. So why the adjustment is necessary? Because if we don't adjust it, then it's similarly like we don't restate it, then the right issue would cause artificial dilution of EPS, because in these shares also certain bonus element is involved. So we'll give an example again. First of all, I'll tell you the formula. We calculate the theoretical X right price, like what would be the price after giving right issue. That would be existing shares times market price, the right shares given at the issue price, divided by total shares that would be outstanding after rights. This sounds very theoretical, but we'll take an example right after this slide. Then we compute the adjustment factor, which is the market price before rights divided by the X right price that we believe would be after come after giving the right issue, and then we apply the treatment. So, for example, XYZ Limited had 10 lakh shares outstanding. The market price before the rights issue was rupees 20 per share, and the company gave right issue 1 share for every 2 shares held. That is 5 lakh shares at rupees 10 per share. That is a discount of rupees 10. And the profit for the year is rupees 30 lakhs. So we'll, if we had to calculate EPS in this, so we just tabulate the data. The outstanding shares are 10 lakh. The market price is 20. Right issue is given in the ratio of 1:2. That is 1 share for every 2 shares outstanding. And issue price of the right issue is rupees 10. So what do we have to find? The earning per share after accounting for bonus element, which is embedded in the right issue. How we'll calculate it? We'll calculate the theoretical X right price. Now, theoretical X right price is 10 lakh times 20. That is the outstanding number of shares times the market price plus the bonus shares into the issue price of bonus shares. So bonus shares are given 10 lakh in the ratio of 1:2. 5 lakh bonus shares are given and the issue price is rupees 10. So we add 5 lakh times 10. And then we divide this entire thing by 15 lakh. That is 10 lakh plus 5 lakh. That is the number of shares that would be outstanding after the right, which gives us that theoretically we believe that after we give the rights issue, the market this price of the share would be 16.67 rupees. Now we calculate the bonus fraction or the adjustment factor, which is the terminology given by the Index 33. That is market price divided by X right price. So it says that market price is 1.2 times the price that we believe would be after the Index. So that we believe would be after the right issue. So we can consider that 1.2, like there is a 0.2 impact of bonus in every share, right? So we adjust the number of shares according to that. We adjust the output shares, that is 10 lakh times 1.2, that gives us 12 lakh. Now the final EPS, the earning would remain the same, that is 30 lakhs. and we divide it by the adjusted number of shares, that is 12 lakh, giving us a final EPS, basic EPS of 2.5 per share. Is this understood by everyone? So the
सिंपली ये ऐसे बोल रहे हैं कि जैसे अपने जो एग्जिस्टेड शेयर्स की जो जैसे फैक्टर बता रहे बोनस फ्रैक्शन, इसका ट्रीटमेंट अपन बोनस रेशियो जैसे अपन ने प्रीवियस बताया था अपन ने बोनस की तरीके से करेंगे, और सेम वे में जो आगे की बात कर रहे हैं जो नॉर्मली अपन राइट प्राइस राइट इशूज जो है तो उसका ट्रीटमेंट अपन नॉर्मल वेटेड एवरेज इस तरीके से करेंगे।
बस ये कि बोनस सारे ही शेयर होते हैं, and this only a part of the right issue contains the bonus element. So now we'll come on to the second part of this index, that is the diluted EPS.
ऑनलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट के लिए नहीं है मेरा आज।
आएंगे सर, मतलब ऐसे कि इस इंडेक्स के 3 क्वेश्चन, फिर अगले इंडेक्स के 2 क्वेश्चन ऐसे आएंगे. So diluted EPS is, it considers the potential equity shares, that if all the instruments of the company that are floating would be converted into equity shares and their remuneration would be included in the earnings, then what would be the EPS in that case? It takes into account all the potential equity shares that may be issued in future through conversion or exercises. And it, in simple terms, it's the worst case scenario that it shows the minimum EPS because it increases the number of shares by a lot, and it does not increase the profit component, the numerator, by that much. So it's basically a worst case scenario and a more conservative metric. You can say that this is the worst that the EPS could go in the foreseeable future. The logic is that protectors it protects investors from hidden dilution. That they should know the true picture or the true and fair view as per India's work of the entity before investing. So it includes anything like convertible debentures, the debt instruments that can be converted into equity shares, which are mandatorily convertible at a predetermined ratio. The convertible debentures would then, for example, if one debenture is convertible into 10 shares as per the treaty, then for number of debentures times 10, that will the number of weighted average number of shares would increase by 10 lakh. And the profit would increase by the amount of interest, because in that case, the debenture holders become equity shareholders. The interest will not be a charge, no more be a charge for the company. So interest will be added to the profit. Similarly, preference shares, if they're convertible, then the preference shares will be added in the denominator, and the dividend that is compulsorily given would be added into the numerator. These instruments can increase the equity shares in the future, and EPS accounts for this possibility in advance. The formula is simple. The adjusted profit divided by adjusted weighted average share. So it is basically a formula for basic EPS, but there are certain adjustments. What are the adjustments? First of all, we add back interest for the convertible debentures, and we add back preferential dividend for the convertible debentures, and the cost disappear on conversion. So all the profit is adjusted with the amounts which were payable to the instruments which are now being treated as a potential dilutive equity share. So before, debt was a different instrument and it was not considered in the calculation of basic earning per share, but now it is being considered in the calculation for dilutive EPS. So the interest won't be payable to anybody because the debenture holders now become equity shareholders. So the remuneration of interest will be added back to the profit. Similarly, in case of preference share, the remuneration of preference share dividend will be added back into the profit. And in the denominator adjustment, as I've already explained, we add the converted amount of share and the equity, which increases the base of equity, or which increases the denominator, and thus decreasing the overall EPS. So you would usually find that in the financial statements, the dilutive EPS is lower than the basic EPS, usually. Now, there are certain dilutive instruments and anti-dilutive instruments, but only the instruments that are dilutive, that dilute the equity shares, that are convertible, have the possibility of converting into the equity shares, are added into the denominator. Now, first question for the online participants.
The presentation is long.
मैं पहले कुछ
हाँ नहीं तो बता ना, जब तक ये ऑनलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट्स के नाम अनाउंस करते थे.
सिंपली डाइल्यूटिव और एंटी डाइल्यूटिव में एक डिफरेंस होता है. डाइल्यूटिव अगर आपने स्टार्टिंग में अगर अच्छे से सुन रहे होंगे तो क्या बोलते हैं, इफेक्ट ऑन ईपीएस, और एंटी डाइल्यूटिव ये डाइल्यूटिव और एंटी डाइल्यूटिव में डिफरेंस कैसे पता चलेगा? सपोज आज मेरा ईपीएस है, सपोज 2 रुपीज का है, अगर वो रिड्यूस कर देता है ईपीएस, सपोज वो 1.90 पे चल जाता है, तो ये मेरे लिए डाइल्यूटिव हो गई। ठीक है, सेम वे में अगर वो ईपीएस 2 से 2.2 पे चलेगा तो वो मेरे लिए एंटी डाइल्यूटिव होगा। तो मुझे इंडेक्स क्या बोलता है, अपने इंडेक्स 33 ये बोलता है कि मुझे डाइल्यूटिव पोर्शन प्रॉफिट कम हो रहा है, जब मेरा अर्निंग पर शेयर रिड्यूस हो रहा है तो उसको मेरे को शो करना, तो तब अपने को उस चीज को बताना पड़ेगा भाई एंटी डाइल्यूटिव।
हाँ, क्वेश्चन फॉर ऑनलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट्स।
मनन।
Sir, option C, both basic and diluted EPS.
क्वेश्चन ही नहीं बोला मैंने। क्वेश्चन ही नहीं बोला मैंने।
इस पे आ रहा है ना,
अच्छा आ रहा है।
इस पे क्वेश्चन आ रहा है। अपने ऑनलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट इतने एक्टिव हैं कि तुमको पता नहीं।
करेक्ट।
और कौन है साथ में?
प्रगति।
प्रगति सही है क्या इसका आंसर? प्रगति एंड लक्ष्य। प्रगति एंड लक्ष्य।
Sir, the answer is C. Correct.
ये प्रगति की आवाज कैसे चेंज हो गई? चलो लक्ष्य ही
Answer is C,
है।
both basic and diluted TPS.
ओके ओके,
नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन अगेन।
एक साथ ही कर लेंगे यार मैंने सारे।
इस इंडेक्स के एक साथ कर लिए,
अच्छा।
इंडेक्स को उसके एक साथ कर लिए।
तो बाकी लोग जीते बताओ।
अच्छा और कुछ है?
हाँ अभी हो रहा है कुछ।
तीन साथ।
ऋषि।
ऋषि एंड सौर्य वशिष्ठ।
D. Share increases without resources.
हाँ सही बोला।
शेयर इंक्रीजेस विदाउट रिसोर्सेज। ऋषि सही है आंसर। तो ये ऋषि को मंडे को बुलाना है।
Then the last question of this index is potential equity shares are considered in dilutive EPS only when they are. Which of the following?
प्रीत।
प्रीत अग्रवाल। प्रीत अग्रवाल एंड शोभित।
शोभित।
चलो ये तीनों के नाम लिख ले। हाँ भाई
C. Dilutive. CPS को जाता है, NT से बढ़ जाता है. Only dilutive potential shares are that decrease EPS are included because वो एक conservative estimate देना चाहते हैं investors. Now on to the next index, which is interim financial reporting. This index prescribes requirements for interim financial reporting. So, what is a interim financial period? Any financial period less than a year. Now, investors need to make decisions. An year-long space is too much for investors to not make a decision. So, this index requires that certain entities make interim financial statements. So this index prescribes the guidelines for how to make those financial statements.
कहाँ जरूरत पड़ती है जनरली, कोई बताएगा? इंटरिम फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग की
जब लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट होती है सेबी के अकॉर्डिंग,
जहाँ पे भी लिमिटेड रिव्यूज होते हैं लिस्टेड कंपनीज के अंदर, तो वी नीड टू सी इंडेक्स 34। यस,
In SEBI's LUDR Regulation 33 prescribes that all the listed entities must prepare quarterly financial statements. So they prepare their quarterly financials as per Index 34. So Ind AS 34 prescribes the minimum content and recognition principles for interim financial reports, and it applies when entities follow India's published financial statements for a period that is shorter than one full financial year. And the objective is to provide timely and reliable information on an entity's financial position, that is the balance sheet, the performance, that is the cash flow, and cash flow, that is cash flow statements during the interim periods. And this ensures that the stakeholders they receive decision useful information throughout the year, not only on 31st March. So the content requirements, these are the minimum prescribed requirements: a condensed balance sheet, statement of financial position as at the end of interim period, a condensed P&L, that is a comprehensive income, and statement of changes in equity, which is the movement in other equity. This is also condensed, and condensed cash flow and condensed explanatory notes. Entities must include either a complete or condensed set of financial statements along with selected explanatory notes. And the Ind AS also explicitly says that these are the minimum requirements, and nothing in this Ind AS should prohibit any company to give full disclosures if they want. So if they want a complete set of financial statements, not only condensed, then they are free to do so. This is only at least this much should be done. But if you want to do more, that is up to you. Now, there are certain significant events and transactions that require disclosure as per Ind AS 34. Means ये तो होना ही चाहिए, which is the write down of inventories to NRV and reversals. If such a transaction has occurred, then this should be included. Impairment losses, if they are recognized on either financial asset, PP, intangible asset, or contract assets, or even if a reversal of impairment is done, then it should be included. Acquisition or disposal of PP, obviously. Commitment for PP purchase and changes in classification of any financial asset. These are asset-related disclosure that must be present in any interim financial report. And related to liability are litigation settlements and prior period corrections if there are any. Loan default breaches. Related party transaction is a must, and it's a high risk area for us auditors. Changes in any contingent liabilities as per Ind AS 87, and fair value changes in financial instrument as per Ind AS 113. Now, these are the comparative presentation requirement that if a company is preparing half-yearly report, then it should provide the balance sheet. First of all, this illustration assumes that the company is preparing balance sheet or their financial statements on 30th September 2022. So if the balance sheet shall have the comparative of 31st March 2022, the statement of P&L should be 6-month ending and 3-month ending of the same reporting date. And it should contain a 6-month ending PL of 1 year before, that is 30th September, and 1 year before 3-month ending 30th September 21. So basically, it should report 6 months, that is 1st March 2022 to 1st April 2022, 30th September 2022. This should be the current period, and the reporting period, comparative period, should be 1st September 2021 to 30th September 2021. And if it's 3 months, then July 1st, 2021 to 30th September 2021. Then statement of cash flow should be also 6-month ending, and statement of changes in equity should also be 6-month ending, similarly like P&L. The balance sheet comparison is with the previous year end, while all the other statements compared with the corresponding interim period, because balance sheet is on as at, like financial position as on the date. That's why. But there are certain special cases that require your attention, which is, first of all, major periodic maintenance. If a company expects to incur major periodic maintenance in the next quarter or overhaul in the next quarter, then the costs are not anticipated, and because no obligation incurs during the reporting period, they are not recorded. Similarly, provision are also recognized as per Ind AS 37, that only when a present obligation with no realistic alternative to settle the liability exists related to a past event, only then provisions are recorded. Similarly, year-end bonuses are also recorded if the obligation, like bonuses, have been declared during the period. They should not be booked accruedly. They should not accrue, basically. And certain other special cases are variable lease payments. They are recognized in interim period if the sales target is expected to be achieved. But the logic behind all these special cases is that the assets and liabilities that arise from past events and or present conditions should be included in the interim financial statements, not from future intentions or outcomes that you believe you will achieve. Interim tax expense is based on estimated average annual effective tax rate because there is no other way. So if you in the first quarter incur profit of 60,000 and you expect the next three quarters to make a loss of 15,000, you'll consolidate the entire earning, and according to the applicable tax bracket, you will take the entire income tax expense and divide it by 4 for the current period. This is the only exception. Depreciation is based only on the assets owned during the period, and inventories are measured on using same principle as at the year end. Basically, the accounting policies should remain the same as at the closest year end financials, and if there is any major change, then it should be explicitly disclosed.
पर इसमें देखेंगे एक वर्ड है इंटरिम टैक्स एक्सपेंसेस। इन्होंने जैसे बोला कि अपन सारे जो भी इनकम होंगे अपन उनका क्यूमुलेट लेके एवरेज कर देंगे, अपन एवरेज कर लेंगे। लेकिन अगर पहले से कोई ब्रॉड फॉरवर्ड लॉसेस हो रहे होंगे तो उसका क्या, तो अपन क्या करेंगे, जो भी अपने एंड एग्जाम्पल ले लेते हैं। सपोज मेरे 3000 का एनुअल इनकम होती है, ठीक है, मतलब अपन ये मान अपन ये assume करते हैं कि 1500 पर क्वार्टर अपने होते हैं, तो 4 क्वार्टर होते हैं तो 1500 into 4 अपन कितना चाहिए, 6000, ठीक है। बट सपोज अगर अपन ये assume करते हैं कि अपना एक 1000 का ब्रॉड फॉरवर्ड लॉस हो गया है, तो 6000 फिर माइनस करेंगे अपन 1000, फिर डिवाइड करेंगे अपन, एवरेज कर देंगे अपन उसको, फिर उससे एक इफेक्टिव टैक्स रेट आएगी। उस इफेक्टिव टैक्स रेट को अपन हर क्वार्टर पे मल्टीप्लाई करके उससे अपना इंटरम टैक्स एक्सपेंस अराइव होता है। ये चीज
ठीक है, लॉजिक
क्या मिनी क्या बोल रहा है वो, क्या टैक्स के बारे में? अरे अटेंटिव तो रहना पड़ेगा ना, ये लोग इतना पूरी पढ़ाई करके आज सारा निचोड़ तुम्हें बता रहे हैं और तुम लोगों की देखी नहीं और सुनी नहीं। क्या बताया उसने, नहीं पता? ये सही नहीं है ना, चलो आगे बढ़ो।
So there are some more special cases that foreign exchange gains and losses are recognized using actual interim period exchange rate and not any average annual rate or any forecasted rate. This is a limitation because the year has not completed yet, and you cannot take any forecasted rate because that would then give you possibility for manipulation of profits. Contractual versus discretionary rebates. Now, contractual rebates are anticipated if the conditions are expected to be met, and discretionary rebates are not anticipated. Now, contractual, if they're already agreed upon before, then they're contractual, and discretionary, if at the time of payment you feel like you should give a rebate, then those are not anticipated. But contractual and rebates are anticipated if you believe that the contract that was entered into is definitely going to be achieved and there is not going to be a breach of the conditions of contract. And planned costs which are not which are irregular, they're not recognized unless a present obligation exists. So this is similar to the major obligation or overhaul. If the entity only simply plans to on a major inspection or a major overhaul in the next quarter or the next 2 quarters, and they are planned cost and they're also irregular because these will not be incurred every quarter. They will not be recognized because a present obligation does not exist. There are only discussions of it. Now, let's go to a practical application. We are taking a scenario where ABC Limited manufactures automobile.
आंसर देना इसमें, आंसर राइट आंसर देना।
नहीं, हाँ नहीं, अगले में ये तो केस स्टडी टाइप है, तो इन चारों का क्या ट्रीटमेंट होगा ऐसे। तो if the company has reported a net profit of 20 lakh for third quarter, now 4 adjustments the company has made. That the bad debts of 1 lakh are incurred during the quarter, but 50% of those have been deferred to the next quarter. So what would be the correct treatment of this adjustment? इस प्रॉफिट में से कितना माइनस करेंगे इस एडजस्टमेंट के? 50,000।
1 लाख कौन बोल रहा है?
50% नेट
50 तो हो चुका, 50 डेफर हो गया, 50 हो चुका
एक्चुअल में तो 4।
हाँ। Second, additional depreciation of 4,50,000 due to change in the method of depreciation during the current year. तो इसका क्या होगा, ये करंट पीरियड में लेस होगा, अगले पीरियड में लेस होगा, या डिवाइड होगा? इसका कुछ नहीं होगा, ये करंट पीरियड का एक्सपेंस है, ये आपकी करंट पीरियड का एडिशनल डेप्रिसिएशन है, ये लेस हुआ है और ये करेंटली लेस हुआ है. Second, third, exceptional loss of 28,000 incurred during the quarter and 50% is deferred to the next quarter because the end, bus 50% is deferred to the next quarter. So what will be the पूरा 14,000. Last is administrative expense of 5 lakh relating to the third quarter deferred to the next quarter because entity believes that quarter 4 में ज्यादा sale होंगे. So simply you all give the right answer. The net profit will be reduced by the bad debts that were deferred to the next quarter and by the half of the exceptional loss and the total 5 lakh amount. So actual profit will, which will be reported as per India's 34 is 14,36,000. Now 2 questions for online participant.
Asita.
Question is that interim financial report should follow cash basis or different principle than annual statement, same recognition and measurement principle as per annual statement, or only management estimates. What is the correct option of these three?
Ashita.
अक्षिता खंडेलवाल.
Amritanshu. Amritanshu and once.
and कर रहा है. Yes, अमृतांशु.
Disable no.
म्यूट तो वो
बोल दो अगर आवाज नहीं आ रही तो चैट में
नहीं चैट में बंद करें. अक्षिता खंडेलवाल. चलिए इसका नाम लिखो. हाँ तुम लोग बताओ आंसर.
हाँ सेम अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रही.
वो पता नहीं अनम्यूट क्यों नहीं हो रहा. नेक्स्ट वो एक बार पहले ही बता देगा ना.
हाँ. Next question is
Anushka. Diptanshu.
Yes, sir.
Which
इसका आंसर
expense?
क्या होगा?
Which expense is recognized only when obligation exists in the interim period or the reporting period. Planned future
The
maintenance.
answer is C. Provision
C.
based on legal or constructive obligation.
Correct.
अपूर्वा सही है आंसर इसका.
Apurva and Lasita.
So that is all for my side.
हाँ भाई कपिल कैसा था प्रेजेंटेशन? अच्छा था. Who is next?
आशीष
Hello everyone, my name is Ashish Sharma. So today my topic is India's 108 operating segments. सो सबसे पहले अपन देखेंगे कि इस इंडेक्स की रिक्वायरमेंट क्यों है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक एंटिटी है एबीसी लिमिटेड, उसके 3 टाइप्स ऑफ बिजनेस है। एग्जाम्पल टेक्सटाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, आईटी सेक्टर में है, एंड रियल एस्टेट। द ओवरऑल प्रॉफिट ऑफ द कंपनी इज 10,000 करोड़, बट व्हेन वी बाइफरकेट दिस 10,000 करोड़ प्रॉफिट, तो उससे पता चलता है टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री से उसका 6,000 करोड़ का प्रॉफिट है, बट आईटी सेक्टर में जो उसका प्रॉफिट है वो है 5,000 करोड़ का। बट अगर अपन उसका देखें रियल एस्टेट में, तो उसका 1,000 करोड़ का लॉस है। अगर एज अ शेयर होल्डर अगर अपन देखेंगे उस कंपनी को, तो ओवरऑल पिक्चर तो अपने को पॉजिटिव दिखेगी, बट जब अपन उसको बाइफरकेट करेंगे बिजनेस एक्टिविटीज में, तो अपने को पता चलेगा कि रियल एस्टेट में कंपनी को इम्प्रूवमेंट की जरूरत है। तो इस इंडेक्स को पर्पस इस इंडेक्स का लाने का पर्पस यही था कि बेटर डिस्क्लोजर हो जाए, सो दैट शेयर होल्डर कैन मेक अ बेटर डिसीजन फॉर द इन्वेस्टमेंट पर्पस। An entity shall disclose the information to enable the user of financial statement to evaluate the nature and financial effect of the business activities in which it engage in economic environment in which it operates. Judgment is required for applying Ind AS 108. The management should consider the core principle for the purpose of segment disclosure rather than relying on a set rules as was done under AS 17 segment reporting. For example, एक कंपनी है जिसका सीमेंट, स्टील एंड पावर बिजनेस है, तो अंडर Ind AS 108 सीओडीएम जिसको रिव्यू करेगा जिस सेगमेंट को, उसको ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट बोला जाएगा। हुई सीओडीएम वी विल डिस्कस इन लेटर स्लाइड। तो यहाँ पर जो सीमेंट प्लस स्टील, इसको टुगेदर रिपोर्ट करेंगे एज अ बिल्डिंग मटेरियल सेगमेंट, एंड पावर जो बिजनेस है वो सेपरेटली रिपोर्ट होगा। बट अंडर Ind AS AS 17 they are the 3 segment: cement, steel and power. These are separately reported. So Ind AS 108 में reason for segmentation, how management allocate resource and evaluate performance. Under AS 17, the nature of product and service as per the standard. Here the objective is how the business is actually managed, and under AS 17, standardized external policies. Now key concept. The entity should provide the information used by the management that will allow the user to understand the entity's main activity and the location of those activity and the performance of those activity. जो एग्जांपल अपन ने पहले लिया था जिसमें 3 सेक्टर थे जिसमें एंटिटी ऑपरेट कर रही थी, तो वहां पर अपने को पता चल रहा था उसकी मेन एक्टिविटी थी टेक्सटाइल वाली थी, जिससे 6,000 करोड़ का उसका प्रॉफिट हो रहा था। तो यहाँ से एक यूजर को पता चल सकता है कि उसकी मेन एक्टिविटी कौन सी है। It allows the user of the financial statement to review the segment information from the eye of the management rather than the risk and reward approach. What is risk and reward approach? We will study in the later slide, thus enhancing the user's ability to predict the action and reaction of the management that can significantly affect the enterprise prospect for the future cash flow. Now, scope of Ind AS 108 applicable to the companies to which Indian accounting standards notified under the Companies Act 2030 apply. When the company is not required to prepare the CFS, so it is mandatory for the company to disclose the segment information under the SFS, sorry. Where the company is required to present the CFS, so it is mandatory for the company to disclose the segment information under the CFS, but it is optional to disclose this information under SFS. However, where the presentation of the segment information is optional, in case the entity decided to present it and the title the same as the segment information, then it should mandatorily comply with Ind AS 108. It means कि अगर कंपनी को सेगमेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन ऑप्शनल है बट कंपनी चाह रही है कि उसको सेगमेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन डिस्क्लोज करनी है, तो वो कंप्लाई करनी चाहिए Ind AS 108 में जो भी प्रिस्क्राइब फॉर्मेट है उसके अकॉर्डिंग। अदरवाइज अगर वो कंप्लाई नहीं करेगी तो उसको सेगमेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन अपन ट्रीट नहीं कर सकते। Now, identification and disclosure of operating segment. So there are the 4 steps: identification of the CODM, chief operating decision maker, identifying operating segment. Here the identification of the operating segment is based on management approach rather than the risk and reward approach. Step 3, determining the reportable segment. Step 4, disclosure as per the Ind AS 108. Now step 1, identifying the CODM. Who is CODM? CODM identified as function need not be a person or designation. It is not compulsory कि कोई person या कोई designation का हो. It may be a function also. इसके कौन कौन से functions होते हैं? Allocation of resources, assessment of performance of the operating segment, making strategic decision about the entity segment. Example of CODM, it can be an individual like CEO, COO, can be a committee like senior management or BOD, but cannot be a supervisory board that just approve or review the decision. Generally, highest level of management. Fundamental criteria. Ensure correct identification of reportable segment. Now there is a question for the offline participant. The executive committee of XYZ Limited comprises of CEO, COO, and the president. The committee assesses the performance and allocate the resources. Each committee member has a single vote. Identify the CODM. Anybody? Yes, the correct answer is executive summary because the most significant operating decision and review operating information for the performance and allocation of resources is done by the executive committee. Now again, there is a question for offline participant. Considering the factors above, except that the president can override the vote of committee. Now again, there is a question. Facts are similar to the question one, except the supervisory board review the operations of executive committee. Identify the Can a committee of a non-executive director can be a CODM? Non-executive जो directors होते हैं वो involve नहीं होते in the resource allocation decision. Their primarily role is related to the governance rather than the management role. But however, if there is a function which includes BOD and non-executive director, so here that functions take a major strategic decisions and allocate the resources. So here the non-executive director can also be considered as CODM, although it does not participate in implementing such decisions, because as a function, जो वो functions है उसमें BOD and non-executive director both include है, और जो उनका काम है मेजर स्ट्रेटेजिक डिसीजंस लेते हैं, allocate करते हैं रिसोर्सेज, तो उसको CODM का पार्ट कंसीडर करेंगे. Now there is a question for online participant. The board of the director XYZ Limited, consisting mainly of non-executive director, review segment-wise performance and allocate capital. Day-to-day execution is carried out by the CEO, who is a CODM.
Bhavya Khandelwal, Anurag Singhal.
Sir, C. Answer is C. Yes, the correct answer is C. Board of Directors. Now, second step, identifying operating segment. So basically, there are the three conditions to identify the operating segment. Number one, the segment has its own revenue and expenses. Second, the results of that segment is regularly reviewed by the CODM to make decisions about resource allocation and to assess its performance. And third, discrete financial information is available for the component. Discrete financial information means it has its own expense, income, assets and liabilities. Then it is called as operating segment. Example of operating segment. There is an entity ABC Limited, manufacture and sells healthcare product and food and grocery product. Three products, product A and B, C are manufactured. Product A is a healthcare product and product B and C are classified as food and grocery products. Product B and C are similar in nature. Discrete financial information is available for each manufacturing location and for selling activity of each product. They are the two line manager, manager X and manager B. Manager X and manager X and manager Y. Manager X manage the product A and manager Y manage the product B and C. And the results of all the segments are reviewed by the CODM. Identify the reportable segment of ABC Limited. The answer is both. Now, function integral to the business. There are the many functions in the business like R&D department, marketing department, and other department. If the department satisfy the condition of operating segment, then they can also be called as a CODM. The conditions are कि उसका खुद का expense होना चाहिए, उसका रेवेन्यू होना चाहिए, उसकी डिस्क्रीट फाइनेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन अवेलेबल होनी चाहिए, एंड सीओडीएम उसको रिव्यू करे, तो दे कैन ऑल्सो बी क्लासिफाइड एज अ ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट. Now discontinuing operation, whether an operating segment, yes, if it is satisfy the condition of a operating segment. Now overlapping set of component. For example, there is an entity which operate in a different states of India, like Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. In Rajasthan, it also operate in a various cities like Jaipur, Ajmer, Kota. CODM review the performance of the state-wise like Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu, and also review the performance of Jaipur. So here the operating segments are Jaipur and Rajasthan, but Rajasthan includes the Jaipur. So ये double disclosure हो जाएगा if they disclose the segment information. So it is a decision of the company कि जयपुर की segment information disclose करे या राजस्थान की. For example कि जो major business है राजस्थान में वो जयपुर से ही होता है. तो it is better for the user कि जयपुर की सेगमेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन डिस्क्लोजर हो ताकि वो बेटरली अंडरस्टैंड कर सके कंपनीज की परफॉर्मेंस एंड बेटर डिसीजन ले सके. In that situation, the entity should determine which set of the component constitutes the operating decision by reference to the core principle of Ind AS 108. The core principle is that the entity should disclose the information to enable the user of its financial statement to evaluate the nature and financial effect of the business activity in which it engages and the economic environment in which it operates.
श्रवण, ये सही दिया क्या इसने जयपुर और राजस्थान वाला एग्जांपल इस पर्टिकुलर चीज को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए?
तो टू एंड क्लियर प्रेजेंटेशन और अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए तो ये जरूरी है, नहीं तो डबल डिस्क्लोजर से तो वहाँ पे अल्टीमेटली हमारे को ओवरऑल फाइनेंशियल भी मैच कराना
नहीं, लेकिन इसने ज्योग्राफिकल लोकेशन का दिया है एग्जांपल एज कंपेयर टू प्रोडक्ट का एग्जांपल देता है या कोई सर्विस का एग्जांपल देता है या
सो ज्योग्राफिकली भी हमारे को रिपोर्टिंग करनी पड़ती है सेगमेंट रिपोर्टिंग.
दैट इज ए डिफरेंट रिपोर्टिंग. यहाँ पे एस 17 और इंड एस 108 आपने क्या एस 17 के हिसाब से एग्जांपल दे दिया यहाँ पे, जहाँ पे उन्होंने प्राइमरी और सेकेंडरी सेगमेंट की बात करी है. जो ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट में वो बात नहीं होती है. ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट डू नॉट हैव दिस कांसेप्ट ऑफ प्राइमरी सेगमेंट एंड सेकेंडरी सेगमेंट, है ना. तो यहाँ पे ज्योग्राफिकल अलग से इंफॉर्मेशन देनी होती है. तो फॉर दैट यू नीड टू कंपाइल द इंफॉर्मेशन. और ज्योग्राफिकली आप कितना से यूरोपियन यूनियन को कितना कर रहे हो, यूएस को कितना कर रहे हो, इंडिया में कितना हो रहा है, डोमेस्टिक कितना हो रहा है, एक्सपोर्ट कितना हो रहा है. सो दोज इंफॉर्मेशन आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बी डिस्क्लोज एज पर इंड AS 108, बट इट इज नॉट सेड दैट दे आर ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट्स. ज्योग्राफिकल को उन्होंने ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट्स नहीं माना है. ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट में इन्होंने प्रोडक्ट वाइज या सर्विस वाइज या वहां बात कर रहे हैं. तो ये डिस्टिंक्शन है. तो दैट इज व्हाई यू नीड टू see this Ind AS 108 in a different way, not in that way कि हाँ
सर एक रेफरेंस के लिए दिया था, एग्जांपल आगे कंसीडर करें इसका एक बार बेटर अंडरस्टैंड होगा. Example of overlapping set of components. An entity has a three component, namely manufacturing, distribution, after sales service. For internal reporting purpose, the information reviewed by the CODM includes results of manufacturing and distribution together and results of distribution and after sales service together. In this case, the distribution component forms part of more than one set of internally reported information and therefore represents overlapping set of components under Ind AS 108. In such circumstances, the management shall apply the judgment to identify operating segments that best reflect the manner in which the business is managed and resources are allocated. In accordance with the core principle of Ind AS 108, instead of mechanically identifying segment based on overlapping internal report. Now, aggregation of operating segment. Aggregation of operating segment is also possible under Ind AS 108, but following factors are similar in each segment. First, the nature of product and service, the nature of production process, type or class of the customers for their product and service, the method used to distribute their product or provide service, and the nature of regulatory environment. Now, there is an example of aggregation criteria. X Limited is engaged in a business of manufacturing and selling the paper. Varieties of the paper like adhesive paper, anti-rust paper, antique paper, art paper, etc. are manufactured and sold by the X Limited. State whether X Limited should classify these papers into different segments. Anybody wants to answer? There is no need to create the different segment. Now there is a question for online participants. An entity, an entity has identified 4 operating segments. Management proposes to aggregate 2 of these segments for the disclosure purpose. As per Ind AS 108, aggregation of operating segment is permitted only if
Devanshu.
The answer is B.
सही है.
the correct answer is B. Now step third, determining the reportable segment. So कुछ threshold limit है जिसके basis पे अपन reportable segment determine करेंगे. Number 1, 10% or more of a combined revenue, both internal and external. And second condition, 10% or more of a profit or loss, whichever is higher in a absolute amount. Now third condition, 10% or more of a combined asset. If these 3 conditions are not satisfied, but management believe that the segment information would be useful to the use of the financial statement, then the management can report the segment. Now there are the other requirement also. Aggregation principle, we have studied earlier that aggregation is also possible if the factors are same in the segment. Now 75% revenue principle. The reportable segment which the entity is likely to report, the revenue, the external revenue of that reportable segment must be at least 75%. If it is not, then additional operating segment should be identified as reportable segment, even they do not meet the 10% threshold, until at least 75% of an entity revenue is included in the reportable segment. Now continuity principle. If the management judges that an operating segment identified as reportable segment in the immediately preceding period, then the is of a continuing significance. The information about that segment shall continue to be reported separately in the current period, even it no longer meet the 10% threshold. Now comparison principle. If the operating segment is identified as reportable segment in the current period, as per the 10% threshold limit, but preceding previous year data present for the comparative purpose should be restated to facilitate the comparison, even if did not meet the 10% criteria in the preceding period.
एक चीज इसमें यहाँ पे स्पेशली ध्यान रखना कि 75% टोटल एक्सटर्नल रेवेन्यू का है, यहाँ पे टोटल रेवेन्यू का नहीं है. ये बहुत जगह मिस्टेक कर देते हैं अपन, फ्लो में पढ़ते हैं तो एक्सटर्नल रेवेन्यू.
Now 10 segment principle. Ind AS 108 में ऐसे कोई प्रैक्टिकल लिमिट नहीं है कि आपको इतने सेगमेंट रिपोर्ट करने हैं, बट जनरली बोला गया है कि आप 10 सेगमेंट रिपोर्ट करिए, उससे ज्यादा करेंगे तो एक्सेसिव डिस्क्लोजर हो जाएगा एंड इट लीड्स टू द कंफ्यूजन टू द यूजर ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट.
अच्छा बताइए कि सपोज किसी एक सेगमेंट का 95% रेवेन्यू है और दूसरे का 5% ही है, तो आर वी रिक्वायर्ड टू डिस्क्लोज द सेगमेंट ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट्स?
सेम मैनेजमेंट का डिस्क्रिप्शन होता है कि 95 तो कंपलसरीली करना है, बट जो 5% अगर वो चाहे तो कर सकते हो.
नहीं, वो फिर अदर सेगमेंट आएगा.
अदर सेगमेंट
95 दैट मींस वी नीड टू डिस्क्लोज द ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट.
कंपलसरी.
कई बार लोग ये कहते थे कि साहब यहाँ तो हमारे यहाँ तो एक ही रिपोर्टेबल सेगमेंट है, तो वी नीड नॉट टू रिपोर्ट, बट that reportable segment should be reported even if it is more than 75%, one single reportable segment, and then balance.
Management discretion principle. Operating segments that do not meet any quantitative threshold may be considered reportable and separately disclosed if the management believe that information about the segment would be useful to the user of financial statement. Residual category. Information about other business activity and operating segments that are not reportable shall be combined and disclosed in all other segment categories. Now there is a question for online participant. Which of the following criteria is used to determine whether an operating segment is reportable under Ind AS 108?
Chirag.
B. Segment revenue, profit or asset are at least 10%.
The correct answer is B. Now there is an example of reportable segment. X Limited has identified the following business components. Segments are Now example 1. X Limited has identified the following business component. Segments are pharma, FMCG, Ayurveda, and revenue both external and internal are given, profit and asset. Which segment would be reportable as per the criteria prescribed in Ind AS 108? Now we have to check the quantitative
सेकंड लोगों से लो ना आंसर.
to answer. कैलकुलेटर चाहिए, कैलकुलेटर चाहिए, परसेंटेज निकालना.
परसेंटेज निकालने के
फार्मा आइटम्स ये तो होगा।
फार्मा आइटम्स
इधर कौन बताएगा हमारे नए बच्चों में से? कृषि, क्या कृषि का?
इसको कर. आंसर इसको ना.
Pharma is reportable.
Correct.
FMCG.
अगर जो बात है see pharma and FMCG are reported. Now, step 4, disclosure. General information. Step number 4, making disclosure. सबसे पहले आती है जनरल इन्फॉर्मेशन. फैक्टर्स यूज्ड टू आइडेंटिफाई एंटिटीज रिपोर्टेबल सेगमेंट. Judgment made by the management in applying the aggregation criteria. Types of product and service from which each reportable segment derive its revenue. Now second, segment revenue, segment profit and loss, segment asset and liability. Now third, measurement basis. CODM may use a measure different from that used in a financial statement to measure an operating segment profit or loss, segment asset and liability, segment result, assets and liability to be reported at a measure used by the CODM. For example, in financial statement, weighted average cost formula is used to measure the cost of inventory and cost of goods sold. बट जो भी CODM को इंटरनल मैनेजमेंट रिपोर्ट सबमिट करी थी मेकर ने, उसमें FIFO मेथड यूज हुआ है टू मेजर द कॉस्ट ऑफ इन्वेंटरी. सो व्हाइल मेकिंग अ सेगमेंट डिस्क्लोजर, यहाँ पर FIFO मेथड ही यूज होगा फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ दिस इंडेक्स. एंड रिकंसिलिएशन स्टेटमेंट इज टू बी प्रोवाइडेड बाय द एंटिटी बाय मेकिंग द एडजस्टमेंट. Now fourth is reconciliation. Reconciliation is about entities revenue, entities profit and loss, entities assets and liabilities. For example, एक entity है जिसका revenue both external and internal है. Segment disclosure में total revenue जाता है तो वहां से eliminate होगा जो भी inter segment का revenue है, then उसका reconciliation provide होगा यहाँ पर. वैसे ही प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस का जो भी स्टेटमेंट जाता है वहां पर अनअलोकेटेड इनकम एंड अनअलोकेटेड एक्सपेंसेस भी आते हैं, तो रिकंसिलिएशन प्रोवाइड होगा जहां पर सिर्फ और सिर्फ सेगमेंट का प्रॉफिट और लॉस होगा. उसमें से
फॉर्मेट भी दिखा जाते हैं.
गुंजन जी, ये फोर्थ वाले में क्या क्या एग्जांपल हो सकते हैं? मेजरमेंट बेसिस. गुंजन शर्मा. गुंजन क्या? गोयल. हाँ,
मेजरमेंट बेसिस.
मेजरमेंट बेसिस को एक्सप्लेन कर. ऐसा क्या हो सकता है? ये क्या कह रहे हैं? CODM में यूज मेजर डिफरेंट मेजर्स डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दैट यूज्ड इन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स. फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट में रेवेन्यू कुछ और ही आ रही है, CODM के हिसाब से सपोज वो अलग तरीके से देखते हैं. ऐसा हो सकता है क्या कभी? क्या हो सकता है?
सर एक तो डेप्रिसिएशन का मेथड हो सकता है. उन्होंने एग्जांपल दिया था कि इन्वेंटरी वैल्यूएशन का मेथड हो गया. अपने पास कई इन्वेंटरी वैल्यूएशन के मेथड होते हैं, हिस्टोरिकल और स्टैंडर्ड कॉस्टिंग बेस्ड. तो हो सकता है कि CODM ने स्टैंडर्ड कॉस्टिंग बेस्ड किया पर अपन ने फाइनेंशियल FIFO या फिर वेटेड एवरेज पे बनाया. सिमिलरली डेप्रिसिएशन का मेथड PWD है या SLM बेसिस पे. फिर थर्ड एग्जांपल इसका हो सकता है कि मान लो CODM ने बाय चांस अगर कैश बेसिस पे अकाउंटिंग करी, मतलब फॉर द डिसीजन मेकिंग पर्पसेस, और अपने फाइनेंशियल्स को अप्रूवल बेसिस पे बनते हैं, तो उसका रिकंसिलिएशन हो सकता है.
फेयर वैल्यू मेजरमेंट वो कंसीडर ही नहीं करते हो पीओडीएम, और आपके फाइनेंस स्टेटमेंट में आपको अकाउंटिंग फेयर वैल्यू पे करनी होती है। तो ये करते हैं, पूरा आपको रिकंसिलिएशन देना है। अगर सीओडीएम में वो उनका डिफरेंट तरीका है फॉर मेक टेकिंग द डिसीजन, और फाइनेंस स्टेटमेंट में कुछ और रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है, तो देन यू नीड टू गिव ए रिकंसिलिएशन बिटवीन द टू। बट एक्चुअल में अगर देखा जाए तो ये कितनी कॉन्फिडेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन है कि जब हम किस तरीके से देखते हैं, हाउ डू वी टेक द डिसीजन, है ना, उसको हम पब्लिक करें कि हमारा मैनेजमेंट जो है वो फाइनेंस स्टेटमेंट इस तरीके को देखता है। इन जनरल ये चीज आई वुड से होती नहीं है ना। ये व्हाट इज दिस, पड़ता नाम सुना है आपने? पड़ता, पड़ता नहीं सुना किसी ने? हैं? पूछना घर में किसी से जाकर कि साहब ये पड़ता क्या होता है, मतलब
बजट में
एक तरीके से। हाँ, बजट किसी ने बोला कि भाई क्या पड़ता है, क्या आपको कॉस्ट, एक कॉस्टिंग रेवेन्यू, है ना, मारवाड़ी वर्ड है। तो वो अलग तरीके से, अलग नजरिए से देखते हैं मैनेजमेंट और जो भी बिजनेसमैन है।
Now, second disclosure is if the following information are provided to the CODM, तो ये भी disclose होगी. Revenue from the external customer and inter-segment revenue, interest revenue and interest expense, depreciation and amortization, entities interest in associates and JV, income tax expense, non-cash items other than the depreciation and amortization, inter-segment transaction, basis of accounting for inter-segment transactions, allocation of common expenses, income to be made on a reasonable basis, geographical area, revenue from the external customer attributed to the entity's country of domicile and attributed to the foreign country, non-current asset located in the entity's country of domicile and in the foreign country, major customer. If the revenue from a single customer is 10% or more of an entity's revenue, the entity shall disclose the fact. Disclose total from the customer and entity of segment reporting revenue. Now there is a common there is a reasonable basis of allocation of the common expenses. For example, there is a management charges which are to be allocated on a net asset or revenue earned by the segment. It is need to be understood that if there is an operating segment which is yet to earn the revenue, it would fail to have any cost being allocated. Interest cost allocated on the basis of the actual usage and time, cost of management of property based on the value of the property used at each segment, pension cost based on salary expense of each segment. There is an important note. An operating segment may be engaged in a business activity for which it has to yet to earn the revenue. For example, startup. Startup is, if the startup is having a potential to earn the revenue in the future, then it can also be classified as operating segment. Following items are excluded while preparing segment disclosures. Why these items are excluded while preparing the segment disclosure? Because these items are not considered by the CODM while reviewing the performance of the segment, and these items are not directly attributable to any segment.
मेनली इसका सिंपल सा मीनिंग ऑपरेशनल नहीं है ये सारे। जैसे अगर देखेंगे इन्वेस्टमेंट, अपना बिजनेस दूसरा होता है, और अगर देखिए जैसे एक एग्जांपल देखिए गेन ऑन सेल ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, इन्वेस्टमेंट अपना मेन एक्टिविटी नहीं है तो वो अपन क्यों लेंगे सीओडीएम उसको ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट के तौर पे, तो इसलिए अपन नहीं कंसीडर करते हैं।
जनरली जो भी डायरेक्टली एट्रीब्यूटेबल इनकम और एक्सपेंसेस होती है वो कंसीडर करते हैं सेगमेंट डिस्क्लोजर में. नाउ सेगमेंट रेवेन्यू, गेन ऑन सेल ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, interest and dividend income, deferred tax income if any, segment expense, loss on sale of investment, interest expense, unallocated head office expense, tax expenses including deferred tax expenses. Now there is a question for online participant. While preparing a segment information under Ind AS 108, which of the following item is generally not included in measurement of segment profit or loss unless such items are included in internal report reviewed by the CODM?
Devika Shah.
Option A, interest income and interest expense.
ध्रुव गुप्ता सही है क्या आंसर? ध्रुव
हरी बेटा है, क्या कर रहा है बाप? हाँ ठीक है ठीक है। नहीं तो आंसर तो ये बताओ, हम ये थोड़ी कह रहे अनम्यूट हो रहा कि नहीं हो रहा।
Now format of disclosure under Ind AS 108.
कुछ भी शुरू करने से पहले सर स्टार्टिंग में बोलोगे ना, जो सेगमेंट होगा, जैसे सेगमेंट ए और सेगमेंट बी रिपोर्टिंग होगा, इसमें फॉर्मेट में देखो, और वो अदर्स, तो अपन ऐसे डिस्क्लोज करते हैं, ये ऐसे
Disclosure सारे
हाँ।
Now there is a format of disclosure under Ind AS 108. Number 1, information about the reportable segment. Entity ने कौन-कौन से segments identify करे हैं जो उनको report करने हैं. Now second, segment revenue and result. Revenue from external customer, inter-segment revenue and total. Segment result and unallocated income. ये total वाले column में add होगी, ना कि segment में allocable नहीं है. Then profit before interest and tax, interest income, interest expenses, profit before exceptional item, PBT, current tax expenses, deferred tax expenses, then profit after tax. Then third point is other segment information. Number 1, segment assets and liability, unallocated asset, and then total asset. Segment liability, unallocated liability, and total liabilities. Now third disclosure. Capital expenditure, depreciation and amortization, non-cash expenses other than depreciation. Now fourth is reconciliation of segment information. Total segment revenue less inter-segment revenue. Then revenue as per financial statement आ जाएगा. Then total segment results, add and less unallocated item, profit before tax as per the financial statement. Now geographical information, if it is applicable. Revenue from external customer, non-current asset and capital expenditure. Now 6 point, major customer information, if applicable. Revenue from a single external customer represents more than 10% of our total revenue. Now we will refer to the actual annual report for the financial year 24-25. Now this is our actual annual report. Here the note 47 about the segment information. ये ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट्स का बताया है कि मैनेजमेंट ने कौन कौन से पॉइंट्स कंसिडर करे हैं टू आइडेंटिफाई द ऑपरेटिंग सेगमेंट्स. नाउ देयर इज अ डिस्क्लोजर, दैट इज पॉइंट नंबर 1, इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द बिजनेस सेगमेंट. कौन कौन से बिजनेस सेगमेंट है जो एंटिटी ने आइडेंटिफाई करे. होम केयर, ब्यूटी एंड वेलबींग इंक्लूडिंग स्किन केयर एंड हेयर केयर. यहाँ पर एग्रीगेशन क्राइटेरिया भी अप्लाई हुआ है, जो अपन ने अर्लियर स्लाइड में पढ़ा था कि एग्रीगेट भी कर सकते हैं अगर factors similar है in each segment. Now there is a segment revenue results of each segment of profit before exceptional items and tax, profit before tax, profit for the year. Now there is a disclosure of the segment assets and liabilities. Now there is a other disclosure, capital expenditure, depreciation and amortization, non-cash expenses other than depreciation. Now there is a other information, revenue by geographical market, India and outside India, carrying amount of segment asset. Now revenue from a major customer. तो यहाँ पर HUL का कोई भी ऐसा सिंगल कस्टमर नहीं है जिसे 10% और मोर रेवेन्यू जनरेट होता है, तो यहाँ पर ये डिस्क्लोजर एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. And now the other information if it is provided to the CODL. Now this is complete. Now auditor's consideration. As per SA 501, the auditor is required to obtain a sufficient and appropriate audit evidence in respect of a segment information disclosed under Ind AS 108. Accordingly, the auditor should evaluate whether the operating segment are appropriately identified based on an internal report reviewed by the CODM, verify that segment revenue, result, assets and liabilities are consistent with the internal management information, assess the appropriateness of an aggregation of the segment where applicable, check reconciliation of the segment information with the entity level, ensure segment disclosure are adequate, complete and not misleading. Now there's a question for the online participant. As per SA 501, while auditing segment information disclosed under Ind AS 108, which of the following is the auditor's primary responsibility?
Tanvi Agarwal.
Her answer is B.
Yes, the correct answer is B. Now there is a difference between Ind AS 108 and AS 17. Basic approach. यहाँ पर management approach apply होती है. Management approach इस तरीके से जो CODM review होगा उसको अपन operating segment बोलेंगे. But AS 17 में risk and reward based approach होती है. Risk and reward based approach होती है कि जो भी segment identify होते हैं वो होते हैं on the basis of different returns and risk. Now basis of segmentation. How CODM review performance and allocate resource. Nature of product, service and geographical area, key focus, internal view of a management, prescribed external reporting structure, use of judgment. Under Ind AS 108 significant judgment involved होता है, but under AS 17 limited judgment होता है. Role of CODM यहाँ पर crucial होता है. CODM का role यहाँ पर CODM का role को recognize नहीं करा था AS 17 में. Primary and secondary segment, no such distinction. Mandatory identification of primary and secondary segment, overlapping concept, specifically addressed, not addressed, measurement of segment information based on the internal report to the CODM. Here the based on accounting policy used in financial statement. Aggregation of segment, here it is permitted but here it is restrictive. Number of reportable segment, यहाँ पर कोई भी practical limit नहीं है, but generally 10 बताई गई है लिमिट जो Ind AS 108 में है. यहाँ पर कोई भी सच गाइडेंस नहीं है. ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ डिस्क्लोजर टू इवेलुएट नेचर एंड फाइनेंशियल इफेक्ट ऑफ अ बिजनेस एक्टिविटी एंड इकोनॉमिक एनवायरनमेंट अंडर AS 17 to provide information about different business and geographical segment. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Satvik Avasthi and my topic is Ind AS 24 related party disclosures. So first is why related party disclosures are required. Related party may enter into transactions that wouldn't occur with unrelated parties. For example, एक reporting entity है वो अपनी पेरेंट कंपनी को गुड्स कॉस्ट पे सेल करती है, लेकिन कोई अगर अनरिलेटेड पार्टीज के साथ अपन हम कोई ट्रांजेक्शन करेंगे यानी सेल ऑफ गुड्स तो वो हम कॉस्ट पे नहीं करेंगे, वो हम नॉर्मल मार्केट प्राइसेस पे करेंगे. फिर सेकंड इज इन्फ्लुएंस डिसीजंस. रिलेटेड पार्टी रिलेशनशिप्स कैन इन्फ्लुएंस ट्रांजैक्शंस विद अनरिलेटेड पार्टीज सच एज डायरेक्टिंग परचेज विद बिटवीन सब्सिडरीज. इसका एग्जांपल है एस लिमिटेड जो कि स्टील मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनी है, उसकी पेरेंट कंपनी एच लिमिटेड, वो परचेज करती है बिलेट्स फ्रॉम यूआर लिमिटेड जो टोटली अनरिलेटेड है एस लिमिटेड से. तो एच लिमिटेड ने जो उसकी पेरेंट कंपनी एस लिमिटेड की उसने एफएस लिमिटेड को एक्वायर कर ली 100%. तो एफएस लिमिटेड एंड एस लिमिटेड आज फेलो सब्सिडरीज. तो एच लिमिटेड ने इंस्ट्रक्ट करा एस को कि आप अब यूआर लिमिटेड से बिलेट्स मत खरीदो और एफएस लिमिटेड से खरीदो. दिस इज हाउ पेरेंट कंपनी कैन इन्फ्लुएंस ट्रांजैक्शन विद अनरिलेटेड पार्टीज. नेक्स्ट इज objectives and scope. Objective of standard is to ensure that financial statement of an entity contains necessary disclosures with respect to related party relationship, whether it is a parent subsidiary relationship, whether it is a joint venture relationship or any other relationship. फिर जब relationship identify हो जाती है तो related party transactions, whether फिर उसके बाद outstanding उन related parties के साथ whether there are any outstanding balances commitments related to future events based on occurrence or non-occurrence of that particular event. फिर उसके बाद आ जाता है scope of the standard. Standard has to be applied in identifying related party relationships, identifying related party transactions, identifying outstanding balances with these related parties, identifying commitments with related parties, identify circumstances in which disclosure is required, determining disclosures to be made of above items. Cases where disclosure are not required, when such disclosures are in conflict with the entity duty of confidentiality in terms of statute or similar competent authority governing the entity. For example, banks के पास customers की KYC details होती है, तो लेकिन banks को अपने customers की KYC details disclose नहीं करनी होती क्योंकि protect the rights of the customer, protect the confidentiality of customer. Second is any other disclosure which is required to be disclosed as per standard, but such disclosure is prohibited by law or regulation or any other statute similar to governing the entity. With related party, definition of related party. Related party is a person or an entity that is related to the reporting entity who are required to give disclosures. फिर उसके बाद आ जाता है types of related party relationships. Relationship between reporting entity and persons, relationship between reporting entity and another entity or entities. अब जब हम related party आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं तो उसमें अपन सब्सटेंस ऑफ द रिलेशनशिप जानते हैं, ना कि उसके फॉर्म पे जाते हैं. उसके बाद अंडरस्टैंडिंग रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन रिपोर्टिंग एंटिटी एंड पर्सन या उसका कोई क्लोज फैमिली मेंबर दैट इज रिलेटेड टू अ पर्सन will be related to reporting entity if such person has control or joint control over the reporting entity, has significant influence of the reporting entity, is the key managerial person of the reporting entity or the parent company of the reporting entity. फिर उसके बाद control. What do you mean by control? Control represents the highest level of influence where one person or entity can direct the strategic and operational decisions of the entity. Control can be obtained through majority voting power, that is more than 50% stake in the company, or substantive voting rights to make decisions. If a person or entity has control, they have the rights to appoint, direct, or control the activities of majority of board of directors. Second is joint control. Joint control is the contractually agreed sharing of control arrangement between the parties which exists when certain decisions are required to be taken. They are required with the unanimous consent of all parties. So this creates a balanced decision making where no one party can act unilaterally. Significant influence next. Significant influence is the power to participate in financial and operating decisions, not over control over these decision making. This represents a meaningful but not dominant level of involvement in another entity's decision making process. Or next is key managerial personnel. Key managerial persons are those persons who have authority and responsibility for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the entity. Key managerial person can be a director or can be executive director as well as non-executive director. It is not necessary that key managerial person can be a director. He can also be part of management committee if such management committee is responsible for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the entity. Next is close family members. Close family members are those members that can influence the dealings of the such person who is related to the reporting entity. They include parents of the person's father and mother, spouse or domestic partner, children and spouse children, siblings, brothers and sisters, and any other dependent persons that can influence the relationship of such person. Examples of related party identification. First is Mr. A holds 51% equity in A Limited, therefore he controls A Limited. उसके क्लोज फैमिली मेंबर सच है उसकी वाइफ, वो भी रिलेटेड पार्टी होगी ए लिमिटेड के लिए. मिस्टर डी इज अ डायरेक्टर ऑफ ए लिमिटेड, therefore he is the key managerial person of A Limited, therefore he is also a related party of A Limited. Mr. S is a director of H Limited. H Limited की एक सब्सिडरी है S Limited, तो therefore Mr. S जो है वो S Limited के लिए भी रिलेटेड पार्टी होगा क्योंकि वो की मैनेजरियल पर्सन है H लिमिटेड की, जो पेरेंट कंपनी है S लिमिटेड की. फिर उसके बाद आता है मिस्टर एच होल्ड्स 25% इक्विटी इन एच लिमिटेड। इसके बाद सिग्निफिकेंट इन्फ्लुएंस दैट इज वो पार्टिसिपेट कर सकता है डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस में बट नो कंट्रोल ओवर द डिसीजन मेकिंग। So therefore he is also a related party of H Limited. Now question for offline participants.
यशराज सोनी।
Offline.
ऑफलाइन।
Mr. S.
आप भी rented नहीं हो।
Mr. S is a director of P Limited. P Limited controls S Limited. Is Mr. S a related party to S Limited?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, option B is correct. Now understanding the relationship between reporting entity and another entity or entities. Fifth first case, same group members. If entity and reporting entity are the member of the same groups, i.e. parent and subsidiary relationship and fellow subsidiary relationship. For example, H Limited reporting entity है उसकी दो subsidiary companies है SA Limited and SB Limited. Therefore, H Limited and SB Limited and SA Limited all are related to the each other because they are members of the same group. The second is associate or joint venture. One entity is an associate or joint venture of the reporting entity or associate of joint venture of member of group of which the reporting entity is a member. For example, S Limited है उसकी एक associate company है AS Limited. S Limited की एक subsidiary भी है H Limited और H Limited की भी एक subsidiary है SH Limited. तो AS Limited जो associate थी S Limited के and SH Limited are also related parties for S Limited and H Limited. Fifth, third is joint ventures of same party. Both entities are joint ventures of the same party. For example, H Limited, a reporting entity, वो दो joint ventures में enter हुई. HA Limited joint venture with A Limited and HB Limited joint venture with B Limited. So, a joint venture HA Limited and HB Limited are related to each other because they are joint ventures of the same party H Limited. If one entity is a joint venture of the reporting entity and another entity is associate of the reporting entity. For example, H Limited एक entity है उसकी associate है JH Limited and another is AH Limited JH Limited is a joint venture of H Limited और AH Limited है जो associate है H Limited की. JH Limited and AH Limited are also related parties because H Limited has influence on both the parties. Next is post-employment benefit plan. Entity is a post-employment benefit plan for the benefit of the employees of either the reporting entity or entity related to the reporting entity. For example, एक entity है उसने post-employment employee benefit plan trust खोला for gratuity fund to deposit करने के लिए. तो जो trust है और जो entity है वो भी related to each other है. Next is entities controlled or jointly controlled by a person as defined in reporting entity. For example, Mr. A एक person है वो A Limited में उसका control है. So he also controls B Limited. Therefore, A Limited and B Limited are related to each other because they are controlled by the same person, Mr. A. The person who has control or joint control over the reporting entity has significant influence over the other entity or is a member of key managerial personnel of the other entity or parent of the entity. For example, Mr. A का control है A Limited पे. He is a non-executive director in B Limited. Therefore, he is a key managerial person in B Limited. क्योंकि A Limited and B Limited are related parties because he has control in A Limited and he is a key managerial person in B Limited. Similarly, एक और example, अगर Mr. A का control होता है A Limited पर B Limited में उसका significant influence होता तो भी A and B Limited are related to each other. Entity or any member of a group which is a part provides key managerial services to the reporting entity or to the parent of the reporting entity. For example, A Limited एक parent company है जिसकी 3 subsidiaries हैं B Limited, C Limited and D Limited. It also has an associate company E Limited जिसकी एक और subsidiary है F Limited. वो F Limited key managerial service provide करती है A Limited को. तो F Limited is also a related party to A Limited, B Limited, C Limited, D Limited and E Limited. Next is the case study. Mr. X has 100% investment in A Limited. He is also a member of key management personnel of C Limited. B has 100% investment in C Limited. Examine related party relationships from the perspective of C Limited for A Limited. Anybody wants to answer? Huh? So A Limited is related to C Limited because Mr. X has 100% control over A Limited and he is a key managerial person of C Limited. Next is examine related party relationships from the perspective of C Limited or A Limited if Mr. X is a KMP of B Limited and not C Limited. Then still A Limited will be related to C Limited because Mr. X has control over A Limited and he is a key managerial person of B Limited. And B Limited is having 100% investment in C Limited. Therefore, C Limited is related to A Limited. Will the outcome in A and B would be different if Mr. X has joint control over the A Limited? Then still A Limited will be related to C Limited because Mr. X has joint control over A Limited and is a key managerial person of C Limited. Now question for online participants. Z Limited operates a gratuity fund for its employees. No contributions were made during the year. The fund is managed independently. What is the relationship between Z Limited and the gratuity fund?
Tanish Jain.
Tanish Jain.
Yasraj Soni. Yes, Tanish Jain. कर दिया था यशराज सोनी. यशराज आवाज नहीं आ रही आपकी.
Unable to unmute.
Unable to unmute. Tanish.
ग्रुप पे क्यों देते हैं तो मैसेज तेरे को पर्सनल दे दें.
यहाँ से कोई बता रहा है?
Anybody wants to answer?
तो बच्चों को बोलो पर्सन तेरे उसको डालेंगे.
Next is standard state that is the definition of related party. An associate includes subsidiaries of associate and in joint venture includes subsidiaries of joint venture. For example, R Limited has an associate G Limited. D Limited has a subsidiary S Limited. And joint venture J Limited and also associate A Limited. R Limited is the reporting entity. तो जो R Limited है उसके लिए कौन कौन सी related party होगी? R Limited के लिए सबसे पहले तो B Limited related party होगी क्योंकि B Limited उसकी associate है और उस S Limited भी related party होगी क्योंकि S Limited is a subsidiary of B Limited. Therefore R Limited के लिए दो related parties होगी B Limited and S Limited और J Limited and A Limited are not related parties because associate and joint ventures of an associate is not a related party. Who are not considered related parties? Two entities are not related parties simply because they have director or other members of key managerial personnel in common or because a member of key managerial personnel of one entity has significant influence over the other entity. For example, इसमें Mr. A जो director है X Limited, he is also a director in Y Limited. He has no other significant interest in these companies. There are no transactions between two entities. So X and Y Limited are not related parties simply because they have common directors. Second is two venturers are not related parties simply because they share joint control over a joint venture. For example, JB Limited is an equal joint venture of J Limited and B Limited. J and B Limited are not related parties simply because they share joint control over the joint venture. Next is normal business dealings. Provider of finance, trade unions, public utilities and departments and agencies of government that does not jointly control or significantly influence the reporting entity are not related parties simply by the virtue of normal dealings. For example, Axis Bank ने loan provide करा XY Limited को by virtue of loan agreement, Axis Bank is a non-executive director in the seat of board of directors of XY Limited. Still, Axis Bank is not a related party because it is a provider of finance in normal business dealings. Next is economic dependence. A customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor, or general agent with whom an entity transacts a significant volume of business simply by virtue of resulting economic dependence is not a related party. Next is question for offline participants. Mr. P is a director in both X Limited and Y Limited. He does not have control or joint control in either company. Are X and Y Limited are related parties? No. Yes, correct. Thank you. Next is understanding of related party transactions. Related party transaction is a transfer of resources, services, or obligations between the reporting entity, regardless whether price is charged or not. Some examples of related party transactions: purchase or sale of goods, purchase or sale of fixed assets, whether there are any commitments to do particular event, if such events occur in future, and whether there are any guarantees given or received, whether there are any service rendered or received, these arrangement between related parties, transfers of research and development. The next is disclosure requirements. There are two categories of disclosure requirement. Category 1, disclosure of relationship, even though there are no related party transactions occurred between these entities. And second is disclosure of relationship when related party transactions occurred between the two entities. Category 1 disclosure of relationships when there are no related party transactions. उसमें सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट सबसे मतलब कॉमन डिस्क्लोजर है एक तो पेरेंट एंड सब्सिडरी रिलेशनशिप का. तो एंटिटी मस्ट डिस्क्लोज द नेम ऑफ पेरेंट एंड इफ देयर इज एनी अल्टीमेट कंट्रोलिंग पार्टी दैट शुड आल्सो बी डिस्क्लोज. The name of such ultimate controlling party should be disclosed and the relationship with them. For example, S4 Limited रिपोर्टिंग एंटिटी है, उसकी एक सब्सिडरी है S3 Limited. उसकी एक पेरेंट कंपनी है S3 Limited. S3 Limited की भी एक पेरेंट कंपनी है S2 Limited. उसकी भी एक पेरेंट कंपनी S1 लिमिटेड और उसकी भी पेरेंट कंपनी H लिमिटेड. H लिमिटेड इज द अल्टीमेट कंट्रोलिंग पार्टी. तो S4 लिमिटेड मस्ट डिस्क्लोज द नेम एंड रिलेशनशिप विद S3 लिमिटेड व्हिच इज पेरेंट कंपनी ऑफ S4 लिमिटेड एंड H लिमिटेड व्हिच इज द अल्टीमेट कंट्रोलिंग पार्टी ऑफ S4 लिमिटेड. If neither the entity nor the ultimate controlling party produces consolidated financial statements available for public use, name of the next most senior parent company shall also be disclosed. For example, वही S4 Limited की parent company S3 Limited, S3 Limited की parent company S2, S2 की parent S1, S1 की parent H Limited. और H Limited exempt है from preparation of CFS. For example, H Limited may be a investment entity, तो उसको CFS बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है. और S4 Limited की जो parent company है S3 Limited, वो भी exempted है CFS से. तो only S2 Limited and S1 Limited produces consolidated financial statements for public use. So S4 Limited must disclose the name and relationship with S3 Limited, S2 Limited, S1 Limited, and H Limited. But all the entities produce consolidated financial statement for public use. Then S4 Limited must disclose the name and relationship with only S3 Limited, which is the parent company of S4 Limited, and H Limited, which is the ultimate controlling party of S4 Limited. The disclosure of relationship between parents and its subsidiary is important because of existence of control. The reporting entity may prevent the reporting entity from being independent in making its financial and operating policy decisions. Next is question for online participants. P Limited is a wholly owned subsidiary of H Limited. No transaction occurred between them during the year. What is the disclosure requirement in P Limited's financial statements?
Yes, Lalwani.
Sir, only relationship disclosure.
Yes, correct. Next is category 2 disclosures. Disclosures of relationship when there are related party transactions. Under this, there are two types of disclosures are required. First is disclosure of compensation to KMP. Total compensation paid or payable to key managerial person, including all employment benefits such as short-term employment benefits, example salary and wages, post-employment benefits such as retirement, gratuity, provident fund, other long-term benefits such as voluntary retirement compensation and share-based payment. Compensation includes all benefits such as defined in Ind AS 19, employee benefits such as short-term benefits, long-term benefits, post-employment benefits, termination benefits, and also benefits related to Ind AS 102 share-based payments. फिर एक important exception, if an entity obtains key managerial services from another entity which is a management entity is not required to disclose the compensation paid by the management entity to its employee or its directors. Some other disclosures related to other related party transactions. सबसे पहले nature of relationship, nature of related party transaction, for example parent subsidiary relationship or any other relationships. फिर उसके बाद detailed information about related party transaction, their outstanding balances, whether there are any commitments. And disclosures must be ensure disclosures enable users to understand the potential impact on financial statements. Next, disclosures at minimum shall include total transaction during the period, outstanding balance, amount of outstanding balance of such related party transaction, including commitments, their terms and conditions, whether they are secured, and consideration to be provided in settlement, whether in cash or kind, details of any guarantees given or received, whether there are any provisions for doubtful debts and bad debts are recognized for such outstanding balances with related parties. Quick question for online participants. Mr. A is the CEO of M Limited. During the year, he receives salary, performance bonus, employer's contribution to the pension fund, and share-based payments. Management proposes to disclose only salary and bonus. Is the proposed disclosure correct?
अर्पित
Answer is C.
Yes, correct. Next is कुछ केसेस में हमें डिस्क्लोजर्स में कुछ बातें ध्यान रखनी है। तो जैसे अगर कोई ट्रांजेक्शन रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजेक्शन आर्म्स लेंथ बेसिस पे हुआ है तो हम उसको तभी डिस्क्लोज कर सकते हैं जब वो वेरीफाइड है, मतलब हमने उसका कोई एविडेंस ले रखा है। फिर आइटम्स ऑफ सिमिलर नेचर में बी डिस्क्लोज्ड इन एग्रीगेट except when separate disclosure is necessary which is material for the understanding of users of financial statement. फिर उसके बाद aggregation should not reduce the importance of significant transactions. Materially transactions with individual parties require separate disclosure. For example, purchase or sale of goods should not be aggregated with purchase or sale of fixed asset because both are separate in nature. फिर गवर्नमेंट रिलेटेड एंटिटीज एग्जेम्पशंस, तो उसके बाद रिपोर्टिंग एंटिटीज आर एग्जाम्प्ट फ्रॉम द डिटेल्ड डिस्क्लोजर रिक्वायरमेंट्स फॉर ट्रांजैक्शन विद गवर्नमेंट that is control, joint control or significant influence over the entity or other entity that is a related party because same government has control, joint control or significant influence over the reporting entity. Following are the exemptions provided in case of disclosures. We shall not disclose the related party transactions, outstanding balances and commitments if any. लेकिन कुछ डिस्क्लोजर्स फिर भी नेसेसरी होते हैं गवर्नमेंट रिलेटेड एंटिटी में। सबसे पहले नेम ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, नेचर ऑफ गवर्नमेंट रिलेशनशिप सच एज कंट्रोल, joint control or significant influence. To enable the users to understand the effect of related party transactions, following additional information shall also be disclosed. Nature and amount of individual significant transaction. और अगर कोई ऐसा ट्रांजेक्शन जो सिग्निफिकेंट नहीं है इंडिविजुअली, लेकिन अगर उसको अपन एग्रीगेट करें तो वो तो फिर वो सिग्निफिकेंट हो जाएगा. Then such information should also be disclosed. Next is case study. Government G directs the control directly controls entity 1 and entity 2. It indirectly controls entity A and entity B through entity 1 and entity C and entity D through entity 2. Person X is a member of key managerial personnel in entity 1. Examine the entity to whom the exemption for disclosure to be given and for transactions with whom with respect of entity A. So एंटिटी ए के लिए अगर कोई ट्रांजेक्शन गवर्नमेंट जी से हुआ है तो उसको एग्जेम्पशंस मिलेंगे, और कोई ट्रांजेक्शन एंटिटी 1, एंटिटी 2, एंटिटी सी, एंटिटी डी और एंटिटी बी के साथ हुआ है तो तब भी उसे एग्जेम्पशंस मिलेंगे. लेकिन अगर कोई ट्रांजेक्शन मिस्टर एक्स से हुआ है जो की मैनेजरियल पर्सन है एंटिटी 1 का, तो सच ट्रांजेक्शन शुड नॉट बी डिस्क्लोज्ड. नेक्स्ट इज क्वेश्चन फॉर ऑफलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट. P Limited and Q Limited are controlled by the same government. They qualify for government related entity exemption. P Limited decides not to disclose anything regarding these transactions. Well, which statement is correct? Yes. key differences between Ind AS 24 and AS 18. Ind AS 24 में जो close family member की definition है वो थोड़ी सी wider perspective में, AS 18 में थोड़ा narrow scope है जो only those members are included which are significantly influence the dealings of the such person. Ind AS 24 में government cover entities control, jointly control or significantly influenced by government at local, national or international levels. AS 18 covers only central and state government control enterprises. Ind AS 24 में KMP जो होता है उसके रिगार्डिंग KMP जो KMP होता है पेरेंट कंपनी का वो भी रिलेटेड पार्टी होता है. AS 18 में ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. KMP only of KMP of the entity is considered as a related party. Next is post-employment benefits. Ind AS 24 specifically includes post-employment benefit plans for employees as related parties. AS 18 does not explicitly cover such entity in its related party definition. Ind AS 24 requires disclosure of next most senior parent company in consolidated financial statement if ultimate controlling party does not produce consolidated financial statements. AS 18 has no such requirement for parent entity disclosure. Ind AS 18 requires comprehensive disclosure for KMP compensation, such as short-term employee benefits, post-employment benefits, other long-term employee benefits, termination benefits, share-based payment. AS 18 does not mandate such detailed categorization of compensation disclosures. AS 18 acknowledges the inherent difficulty in determining the effect of influences that don't lead to transaction and does not require disclosure of such effects. Ind AS 24 does not specifically address this aspect in its provisions. Thank you.
क्लास खत्म होने की कुछ तो फाइनल वाले बच्चे